So the first requirement of this problem is asking us, are the manufacturing overhead costs fixed, variable, or mixed? And when you look at the data in this problem that you're given in the table, it would really indicate that the costs are mixed, because if they were fixed, then you'd have the same amount every month, but the fact that the costs are changing each month would indicate that, based on volume, that the manufacturing overhead has both fixed and variable components. So when we say mixed cost, here we see that these costs of the overhead, for example, for July, $460,000, there's going to be a portion of that will be fixed and another portion will be variable, and that's pretty much the case with all of your manufacturing overhead cost. So it's always helpful for a company to be able to break down its mixed cost into the fixed and variable components, because by doing that, the company will have better information to make decisions. So if it knows what the fixed costs are going to be, knows no matter how many units they produce, the fixed component is set at a certain amount, and then they can then predict the variable cost based on the volume that they are anticipating. So in requirement 2, you were asked to graph the cost, the total manufacturing overhead cost, against the direct labor hours. So here you can see the costs are pretty clustered here, and there doesn't appear to be any outliers. So that can be done by hand or in Excel. The next scenario you want to look at is, we're asked in requirement 3 to graph the direct or the manufacturing overhead costs against the units produced. And again, you could do it in Excel or by hand. So now when you do this, you can see here that you can pretty much draw a line through here, but what happens, this one here appears to be an outlier. So if you look at this particular value here, this is the 4,200 units for the month of September. So this seems to be a bit of an outlier. So this might be an area that you would want to check into the data before continuing with your analysis. So for requirement 5, in problem 6-63. In problem 5, we're using the high-low method to determine the breakdown of the fixed and variable cost. And it's very important for management to know that. They need to know how much of their total cost is fixed. That way they can make various business decisions, because they know that no matter what their production level is, a certain component or certain amount is going to be spent on fixed costs regardless. So with the high-low method, it is fairly simplistic. It's probably not as accurate as some of the other methods, but it's certainly a valid methodology to break out total into fixed and variable components. So the first step here with the high-low method is to find what we call the slope. So you're going to take the month that had the highest dollar value of overhead costs, subtract the lowest level, 475. Then you're going to divide that by the month with the highest number of direct labor hours and the month with the lowest number. So that works out to be your variable cost of $12.75 per direct labor hour. So now that we know the variable cost, we know the total cost. So now what we want to do, we want to solve for the fixed cost is what we're looking to solve. So we take the total manufacturing overhead, and we can take it for the highest month, which is the 527. So first of all, its total manufacturing overhead is going to be equal to 1275 times X plus your fixed cost. So when we are operating at a level of 527,000 in total cost, so it's 1275, that's your variable cost per unit, at that level of total cost, your direct labor hours will be 27,000 direct labor hours plus your fixed cost, which is really your X. You're trying to solve for that. So now we have 527 is equal to 344,250 plus, we're still looking for our fixed costs. So now what we want to do, we want to subtract that 344,250 from both sides of the equation, because we want to get the unknown factor on one side. So we're going to minus 344,250. So that leaves you with 182,750 is equal to your fixed cost. So that's how we came up with this 182,750 as your fixed cost. So with requirement number 6, here, now that you have your formula, you can now use that formula to do what we call what-if analysis. So management can say, okay, now that we know the formula, this gives them a lot of information. So now we can say, well, what about if we end up with 24,000 direct labor hours in the month of January, what will our total cost be? So when you're looking at that solution, you keep your 1275, because regardless of the number of direct labor hours, it's going to be 1275 per hour. So now we're saying, okay, what about if we had 24,000 direct labor hours plus our fixed costs? So 1275 times your 24,000 hours plus 182,750, that's the fixed cost that we just calculated. That's your fixed cost. That will give you total cost of $488,750. So that concludes problem 6-63.